Hi, welcome to another edition of Legal Quilts. It is Scrap Summer 3 Kickoff. I am so excited. We've made it to 3 of them, and it's summer. And it's scrapping time. As you saw from the thumbnail, I've got a lot of scraps to get rid of. So this year, we're doing something a little different. Instead of a lot of little blocks and techniques and everything that would use up your scraps, we're just going to do one block this year. I'm going to break it down into parts. And why are we only doing one block? Because we're doing one of the hardest patterns out there. Although, when you break it down, it's not that hard. It looks hard because it's a lot of little pieces. We're doing the wedding ring block. And yes, there's curves. That's the other reason. We're going to work on sewing curves together, okay? Once you get through the summer, you're going to find out curves are not nearly as scary as they're made out to be. They're not nearly as bad as hexagons with the Y seams, and we all made it through hexagons, so you can do that. I'm going to have a link to this pattern, Little House on the Prairie, put out by Andover. It's a free pattern in the show notes, so you can see the directions yourself. You can see everything here. All right. I'm just going to kind of talk you through it. Okay. Now, what I really like about this one is instead of that big old centerpiece that's a pain in the neck, let me move that a little closer. See how big that is? That's your center of the block. And that takes up a lot of room, and there's all these curves to sew, and it's just not really portable. But with this pattern, what you do is you sew it in parts, okay? So they break it down into 4 parts that come together to make that centerpiece, okay? And this is also really great for scraps. So you're only sewing it comes together a little easier. You still got the melon piece, of course, but this is your outside piece that then either is on the outside or the inside to make that centerpiece, and it makes it a lot easier and portable, because you know that's the big thing with me with Scrap Summer stuff. We're all traveling. We want something that we can take with us and work on in little bits and pieces. You know, as we're sitting around the campfire, sitting around not the campfire, there's not enough light to really sew by. You know, sitting in the hotel room, if you can sew in the car, you know, something simple and easy and portable that you just throw in a small bag and you can go. And the great thing about this is, until it's time to sew the pieces together, you're working with just small portable things. So that's the other thing I like. With this big old one, it wasn't very portable when it came time to sew the rings on. So I like this a lot better. The other thing I like about the wedding ring quilt is, as you can see, it's very scrappy. You can use a lot of little different colors. And because the pieces are so small, you can use your smaller scrap pieces and use those up and get them out of here, okay? Now, the one we're doing is going to be very, very scrappy. Obviously, if you're doing this for somebody's wedding and you want to use their colors, it's a little less scrappy, okay? But we're going to do it scrappy, scrappy, all right? And I mean scrappy, scrappy. The rings are all going to be different pieces. We're going to be cutting those today, all right? And the good thing about those is you can cut for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and come back and do some more, okay? But you have to decide how you want your quilt to look. Now, we're only working here with lights and darks, no mediums, because you really want a division between your rings and your background, okay? So, not a lot of mediums that would kind of blend in with either your lights or your darks. You want real contrast here. Now, you can either do your rings dark or light and your background dark or light. And the cool thing with this is even your background can be scrappy. Now, you don't want to do all these pieces here a different color. You want them the same color. But you can use your smaller scraps to cut them out as long as they're roughly the same color. Like use all your yellows or all your blues or whatever to make that. But each one can also be a different color. I ran this on my electric quilt 8 to see what it would look like with an all different background, and it looks really cool. Or you can say, I've got this fabric that I just really want to get rid of, and that would make a great background. You can use your background all the same, and then it doesn't matter if your rings are light or dark. If you're using the same color background, you just want to make sure they contrast and don't blend in. So like if you're using a pink background, you don't want any pinks in your rings. Okay, you want that to really have a difference, as you can see, between your rings and your background. All right. Another thing you have to remember when picking out fabrics is for the ring pieces, you can use your larger prints. As you see here, I'm using this. It's got that big old print. You can use that because it doesn't matter. You're only going to be as big as the template, but it's okay because it's scrappy, so it doesn't matter if you get the dominant color or whatever in your pattern. You don't want to use that for your background because although that's bigger, you don't want your background to distract from the rings. The pattern is wedding ring quilt, not wedding background quilt. So you really, really, really want to make sure that you are contrasting your background. So you really don't want a large print like this or this one that would overwhelm your rings. Now, as you can see from this, I'm choosing to use darks for my rings, and your darks are your blues, your purples, your reds, orange. I'm using a lot of orange in this, which is really unusual for me, and the fact that I have a lot of scrap orange says something. Your greens, all of those really dark colors that stand out. You can even use dark yellow if it stands out, or a very dark pink. I'd stay kind of away from the dark pink. You don't want the pale colors. Now for light, white obviously, cream, light yellow, pinks, light pink. Browns are also a really good one, but you don't want a dark brown. You can use a dark brown here, but you want a light brown. Like some people say no darker than a grocery bag, you know, a paper bag. I think that's even too dark. So you want to think lighter colors that kind of are just a shade or so off of white, okay? Or you can switch it and you can use light on your rings and dark on your background. But again, you want contrast here, all right? So what are we going to do today, now that we've talked about color choices? Today we're just going to cut the rings, all right? Because in case you haven't noticed, we just did one last week, and then we're going to do one next week to keep it in the schedule. But Memorial Day fell in the middle of the schedule, and I always kick off Scrap Summer on Memorial Day weekend. Don't forget on Memorial Day to honor those who gave their all so that we could be free to quilt or do whatever we like to do. It's not just barbecues and quilting. It's about remembering those who gave the ultimate sacrifice for their country. So, the other reason I'm posting this, the links to this, is so you have the templates. We're going to start with the wedding ring pieces. Here's my template. I printed it off on paper, cut out the paper one, traced it onto an old file folder. Day job, make sure I have lots of file folders. And then I helpfully labeled it wedding ring wedge, okay? This is for the rings. Next week, we're going to start sewing the ring pieces so I can show you how to do curves. Now, how are we cutting these? This isn't hard at all right? I'm doing them 2 at a time. I want it to be really scrappy, so I'm using a lot, and I'm not cutting more than 1 from any one at this point. So I want it to be really, really scrappy. But this is the size of pieces you can use, even smaller than this. See how big that is? It's really easy. Now, I'm doing them 2 at a time, so I'm laying it on there. All right, just laying that on there. And then you take your template piece. And because I'm working with darks, I'm using my yellow chalk here, handy dandy chalk. And you just trace around it. Now, normally something like this with curves and everything, I would do on my Cricut, okay? Move the fabric around to make it easier to color. I think being left-handed makes it harder to trace, and I'm trying not to block my arm so you can see what I'm doing here. Okay, you just trace it onto the fabric. I said normally I would do this on the Cricut to get my curves cut perfectly, okay? Whoops. Go back over your lines and make sure you can see them. Okay, see? Okay, there's the design on there. I know it's a little light up there, but there's the design on the fabric. All right, I'm doing it on the opposite side because the dark was really dark and I wasn't sure even the yellow would show up. Okay, like I said, normally I would do this on the Cricut. Set it up, have it, Cricut. I keep saying Cricut, it's Cricut. Have this pattern set up, cut them, no problem. But because I want this to be really scrappy and I'm using only one from each fabric, I don't want to stand there running one piece of fabric through the Cricut all the time. Cricut's great if you're doing multiple things. For single things, old-fashioned rotary cutter. It's my rotary cutter. Cannot say enough about this rotary cutter. And you just cut them out. Now I'm doing 2 at a time. I don't know how many you feel comfortable cutting at a time. You can do 3 or 4 at a time. You can do 1 at a time. Whatever you're comfortable cutting out. And like I said earlier, the great thing about this is you can take 2 minutes, take a few minutes if you got a few minutes, you know, you got some downtime and you want to do something, but you don't want to get into a heavy project because you only got a few minutes. Take a few minutes, trace some of these, cut them. Let's see how I did. I do tend to have trouble on one of these corners here, cutting them. Okay, there we go. All right, and you just cut it out. Boom. There we go. That's one of the better ones. And you've got your wedge pieces. And you just keep cutting these, all right? How many do you need? For 1 block, which is all we're going to make, but if you want to get going, you're obviously going to have to make lots of these if you want to make a whole quilt out of this. This summer we're only doing 1 block, but so far I'm loving how portable this is. So this might become the go-to in about 5 years. You might see a finished quilt. You know how that goes. You haven't seen the finished butterfly quilt yet. And then I just toss them in a basket here so that when it comes time to sew, which like I said you'll do next week, I can just grab them out and sew them. You need 40 per block, all right? So at least cut 40 for this summer. And I know that sounds like a lot, but again, you got to spare 5 minutes, don't want to get into a big project, cut some wedges, all right? So that's it for what to do. Like I said, next week we're going to sew them. But this week, just start cutting your wedges. If you don't really want to get into this, you only need 5 for next week, all right? Make it easy on yourself. So we're going to cut those. So cut those. Next week we'll sew them. And then we're just going to progress through this. So that's it. Have a happy, safe Memorial Day. Remember those who gave their all. And if you want to support my work, don't forget the QR code at the end, or everything will be at the bottom. I have now added the affiliate links because I sorted that all out. If you want to buy a Cricut because you want to cut your pieces this way, they're having a sale for Memorial Day. The code is on there. Also, I mentioned I used Electric Quilt 8 to see what this would look like scrappy. That affiliate link is on there too, and they are also having a sale. Again, the code will be there. That's it for this edition. Like, share, comment, but be nice in the comments. If you wouldn't say it to somebody's face, don't say it in the comments. Share, subscribe. We are getting so close on the subscribers and the views. Every little view helps, so share it with your friends, all of those things. But remember, there's no quilt police, so how I'm doing it might be different from how you're doing it, but it doesn't mean either one of us is wrong, all right? I will see you next week for us to sew those. In the meantime, have fun quilting.